Praise God.
I know that's right.
No matter how hard it gets.
Thanks for calling Wholesome Maintenance.
We haven't finished yet. There's so much of life ahead. We've got so much to do.
Hello, hola.
Now she's Spanish.
I
Come
can't
on.
do
You were
the
definitely
English
doing a
accent.
British thing, and then you
I
came
can't
back.
do it. Yeah, I'm not good at it. Good morning.
Good
Hello.
morning. Hello. I like your British accent. It's cute.
The hello was good.
It's not. It's not.
Don't
don't have
say
to
not
lie to
ever
me.
again.
It's a bit cockney, yeah.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Hope for Maintenance.
What's
How's
up?
everybody
How are we
doing tonight?
feeling?
I feel great. I don't know if anyone notices. We're virtual. I know you did not bring your balloons to the chat.
I didn't mean to do it. I promise. I was just you did the peace sign, so I did the peace sign. I really didn't try.
I know you didn't bring your balloons to the
But
chat.
now that we're here, can I do my little thing? Is this gonna work on here?
Oh no. Oh. All right. Thank you so very
this
much.
is our FaceTimes have now been brought to a
Real
screen
life.
near you.
Low key, I'm excited. It feels like it too. This is amazing.
Oh, I
So
love
quite a few
that.
things have changed. We will not be in our set anymore, in our yellow set. If we're being honest, no one liked it. Who made the set? Me. Let's move on. Now, I'm actually really excited for this phase, because if I am being honest, we're just in a transition, and I think we're perpetually in a transition, and the virtual format just makes sense for us as a group of people. And I think I can speak for all of us when we say we like a good thing and a quality thing, and we want this to work so much that we're going to take all precautions to try to make it work before we have given it the good old college try. Yes?
Yeah.
No? Now my balloons are here.
Okay.
Sam, make some balloons.
Yeah, Sam, just go ahead.
Throw us the peace sign.
The balloons.
You don't have
or
balloons?
the mess. No, I don't.
Goodness
And I
gracious.
wish
Do
you
the peace
guys-
sign. You didn't
I have
even
no
try.
balloons. I have no balloons.
The balloons aren't coming.
Okay.
All right.
I love that
Please.
though. I love that. I love the transition because I think like we're about to do a thing with this. And I think, like I feel like we're reintroducing ourselves to you guys. So I think that that's like a really, really cool. I don't know, it just feels transitional being virtual. So I'm hyped. I'm hyped.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to give a little bit of transparency, prior to today, this was not an independently produced podcast. And so we had to try to do a lot of working and remanaging of our schedules that just did not work for us as a group of people. So in this phase of being able to represent ourselves, I think we have a lot more freedom to do and say what we want. We're not really beholden to the time frames of being inside a studio or other people's schedule and how they can record us and whatnot. So I'm excited. It feels like us again. It feels like really intimate. Yeah.
So,
all right. So who's up first?
It's time for online.
Okay. Praise God.
And the news online are a little bit
online.
insane.
They're
So
online.
They're online. Some of them are offline. Some of them have logged off. And specifically, I'm speaking of Diddy.
Oh.
They cannot find him. He is on the run. They said he's boarded a plane. The memes have me in a chokehold. But for those of you who do not know, a couple of Diddy's properties were raided yesterday by Homeland Security. There's allegedly, and we're going to use a lot of allegedly because no one really knows all the details. Allegedly,
it just happened yesterday.
Right. There's an ongoing investigation for human trafficking, is what they're saying. And so there's been a lot of different suspicions and assumptions about what is circulating. But what we do know is that this is a big highlight for the culture right now because Diddy was just under heat for some allegations with Cassie, where she had filed a civil suit. And now allegations is, okay. But she had filed a civil suit, and so we just had conversations there, and then it died down, and we thought, okay, well, Diddy's up to something, and then it became Diddy and Meek Mills, and then it was Diddy and my pastor. I don't want to get into that, but it was Diddy. Diddy in the headlines for a very long time, and now his properties are being raided. So
Yeah.
we've had a couple talks about it since it's come out. So what are you guys seeing? What are you guys thinking? Do you think this is something where it's like, all right, here we go with just another Diddy thing and it's gonna go away? Or do you feel like this might be serious?
Oh yeah, when Homeland Security takes an interest in nigga, absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of Black people and Black celebrities think they can get away with certain things because
Mhm.
mm, I don't even know how to phrase this, but I feel like there is intersection is strong, but I do think Black men in particular at least believe they exist in some sort of invisible state to be able to fly under the radar with certain things, especially as it pertains to how they hurt other people of color, because nobody's really checking for them. And so when I first heard of this in my friends group chat, because you guys know I'm off social, I was like truly aghast when I heard one, his home was getting raided, two, he done fled the country. They had his sons outside in handcuffs, and I was like, oh, this is how those people must have felt when OJ was in that car chase. Um,
Mm.
and hearing that he possibly fled the country made me think that, oh, he's done everything everyone has ever said he's done. And it's not that I didn't believe anyone who has come forth. This just solidified that every nook and cranny of somebody who said Diddy this did this to me likely has plausible like accusations and allegations to make towards this man. And even the inklings that I was hearing about how other stars have been engaged in Diddy's escapades and his freak offs or whatever just made me think of the whole Harvey Weinstein and whatever islands they was on. And I hope everybody get aired out. I really do, because we
Do you
want
think
everybody to
that
be able to speak up.
do you think that memes make it lighter than it should be? Like the way where social media handles stuff like this? Because this is like actually, allegations of,
I think social
I
media as a whole. What were you gonna say, friend? I think social media as a whole makes us take a lot of things very lightly because we're able to do what we do, as people and as a culture. When things get very heavy, we add comedic relief to it. Or because we're so desensitized by a lot of heavy conversation, we
yeah.
find the humor in things where the reality is this is a person who we're saying allegedly because we have to be responsible in our conversation because we were not there. We only know the information that is shared to us. But at the same time, we're not we're thinking beings and we have common sense. And the reality is we've seen the footage of many things that have been just indecent and not okay and have harmed people. We've seen the aftermath of people's lives that have been affected by this person. So, even seeing there was a meme about like Meek Mill or whatever and like how they found Meek Mill at Diddy's house and it was like a man in a cage. And we're making humor about these things, but at the reality is this is a man who's been on camera several times with this man calling him daddy, with this man putting his arms around him in ways that who knows if he's comfortable with that. But when you think about again the reality, this is a very big legend in music, right? And as we all know, when you're around somebody who is bigger or larger than life, like we just talked about last week, it compromises how you would react had this person not been who they are. So yeah, I think that we're taking this. We've been having a kiki and a giggle, but the reality is that there are drugs involved. There's possible human trafficking involved. There are sexcapades involved that go way beyond the norm and possibly may go beyond consent. And it's a real time to think about how the money that we're contributing to this industry, with whether it's with streams or by sharing this information or by going to the concerts, are really funding lifestyles that are harming humans. So
I have a complicated perspective on meme culture, because when I saw that very specific meme about how Meek was found and Diddy's home, and it's a meme, it's not true. And And there's this man in a cage. This man is also naked and bound. And while I got the intent of humor behind it, what I was really thinking about is, man, I actually feel bad for whoever this actually is in this photo, who probably meant for it to be private or only shared in very specific parameters. And now this person's face is all over the internet and being dragged into this. So that's one way that I feel about it. Because people's images get reused and repurposed for anything. We just never know who we're dealing with. And that just seems to be a very vulnerable picture for me. But on the other hand, I think a lot of these memes are focusing on Diddy, at least the ones that do focus on Diddy, I think are actually tools for deconstructing the amount of power and respect certain people have. Because from what's been rumored about Diddy, I don't even know too much about him. Literally, only the things that I know that have been rumored about him are like a drop in the bucket. But the consensus is that he's scary and people do what Diddy says, period. And to make him a joke in this way, I think is actually really powerful. So I think like everything the internet offers us is a double-edged sword.
Or
Mm-hmm.
what's the other one?
I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about Diddy, but it'll come back to me.
Okay. So moving on, just because we know we don't have too many details about that, and I just really wanted to get your perspective. I did want to move on to some we do have a lot of details about. It just recently happened, I want to say about last week, but since then there's been so many different parts of the story have unfolded, and it's a very unserious story as well. The Cabo Girls trip. The Cabo Girls trip has been trending all over TikTok, and before I even get into the details of it, what is really trending on TikTok, Reesa Teesa has done her big one on really influencing the culture of getting on TikTok and telling story times. Before Reesa Teesa, yes, we had the story times. We had the random man in Atlanta. We had the girls who talked about how she was dating this one man and his boyfriend showed up. We've had the moments, the hairstylist stories and all of that.
It was, you didn't hear that one, Obia? Apparently they was fighting outside the Five Church or something. But go ahead.
So what Reesa Teesa did is she brought anthology culture to TikTok, and it's a little bit different. She brought a series on there. So kind of like when we watch something like during the pandemic, we got really into binge watching. That became a thing, binging and whatever. And I feel like she brought that with her just dedication and consistency to telling this very detailed story that could have easily been told in 2 or 3 videos. But it was something about just really dragging it out so that people could feel like, ooh, what's next? Ooh, what's next? And so now what we're having is a bunch of, I'm gonna just say it how it is, lazy girls who are getting on TikTok and thinking, let me go ahead and start this. And then they get tired or they get overwhelmed in the process. And then we find out it was all a lie. And I'm just like.
So the Cabo Girls trip was all a lie?
They said it was all a lie.
Girl.
And they have receipts of the fact that this was a script that was written up by one of the boys on Twitch who said, you know what, like, girl, I'm not finna play these games with you. I gave you the script and this is what it was, and you knew what we was doing, trying to get you a little money. I was able to give you a strategy. Like it was really like, it's very OBO. Exactly.
I'm over it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm over it.
Very much. And it's annoying because it's like you get invested in a good story, you know? I love a good story. And I feel like they're ruining it because even if it's a story that's not true, I would rather you just say that. And you give me like, remember when we used to do like on Tumblr? Like we had like fantasy fiction and all of that. If we're fantasy fictioning, then fantasy fiction me. I'm not mad at it. But when y'all come on and y'all tell these detailed stories that this happened to me in my life and blah, 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 just to find out that it never did, it's like, for what?
I'm going to bring up 2 things. One is a little ludicrous, so just hold on to your hats. There are 2 girls who I think do this really well for different reasons. And one of them was a girl who, and I only know this because y'all know Vail, the Vail show, Vail on TV. He be like, look through that man's phone and da 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 da. And Anyway,
Oh yes, yes. He's
yeah,
like, you don't.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Straight like
what's
that.
his thing? Oh, Tim, I'm trying to help you out here. What's his thing?
He has
Um,
things. I haven't been on the internet in a minute to
oh,
know.
he was in a video with B Simone and the other woman, and he was like, you want a man who is, always there, who has
Oh
your
yeah,
back
yeah,
through thick and thin. You looking for
Mhm.
God? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
well, he was talking about this person, which is why I ended up going to their page. But it was this white woman who had a big ass cinnamon roll, and she said, "So I just discovered how to make cinnamon rolls with my yeast infection." Whoa,
I saw that.
whoa.
Ugh.
And then the next video was like, "Yeah, so maybe not, because I got some thrush on my tongue, and her tongue was
Okay,
white." And she said,
going.
"But I'm gonna hold on, hear it." She said something about, "But I'm gonna continue to make, I don't know, pancakes with my breast milk or something." But if you go on her page, it says satire account. When you go on her page, it says satire account. And then, so that one was really extreme. That was really extreme. But like, stay with me. Then there's a black girl, and I wish I knew her name because she really had me in the first half. She was on this thing doing her makeup, and she wasn't even doing her makeup the best way. She was just like, "Guys, I'm so excited to see my boyfriend this weekend. I'm going to be seeing him at my aunt's wedding. They're getting married. We've been seeing each other for 2 weeks, and they've been seeing each other for like 2 months. But I just really feel like I'm happy for my auntie getting married to my boyfriend. And me and him are so in love that, one day we'll get married too." But she looks like she's so serious that you're like, wait a minute. But if you go to each one of her videos, it's a different outrageous story like that. But she just kind of commits to like the delusion of it all. And so there's a place for that on TikTok, like
Right.
creating fantasy stories, whatever, satire, kicks and giggles. But it's the people putting in this effort to create these lines for like, and when I'm saying this reminds me of the yellow couch conversation we had, just last week. But to create
Yeah.
these communities surrounding their story, like Risa Tisa did, in a way that's so inauthentic, and we talked about it being lazy and how some people just don't got the juice or the squeeze. Yeah, and I don't know if it's like an actual issue about it making it hard for creators or whatever, but it's a waste of everybody's time. You get one Zola every Twitter, and you get one Risa Tisa every TikTok, and y'all need to let it go.
But I think also the thing here is you can't escape consistency. What TikTok allows you to do is it allows you to go viral. But consistency is an actual skill that has to be
Mm.
sharpened. And I think where we see the girls falling off, whether it's the yellow couch or the Cabo girls, and I will give our listeners just a quick synopsis because I know we've continued talking and we haven't given them that. So we'll get there, y'all. Just give a second. I think the common denominator here is that you get to a point where you go viral and it becomes too much to keep up the story because you haven't thought it out yet. Whether it's the girl with the gross girl that almost made me, she's doing a thing and saying that, okay, I'm going to do this. It has the start. This is the middle. This is the end. And when I do it again, it'll probably have the same exact format. Our girl with the Delulu stories, it's the same thing. This is my start, my middle, my end. And when I do it again, it'll have the same format. But when it comes to these girls, it's like, I'm just trying to get some giggles and a couple followers and a laugh, not recognizing that you cannot control what you get. You can't control what you get. The consistency comes in where it's like the point wasn't to get all the people. It was to do the thing, to push the project, to execute. And what you get after that, you deal with it. So yeah. OBO, do you have thoughts before I give the synopsis?
I was just thinking about the other end of popularity that I think people don't discuss often as relates to social media. I think we think about consistency as it relates to making money, but I don't think people often think about how there's more eyes on you. I think even with this story, it was like, uh-oh, it's not turning in your favor. They're calling you guys whack friends, or they're attacking your character. And now you're like, wait, I was lying. And it's like there's a whole heap of people who are waiting to like have an opinion. I think people who are trying to be content creators or influencers or trying to build a following, I don't think they always think about the fact that you're going to be building a following of people that you can't control. You can't control who comments what. essentially. So as you're building your following, as you're trying to do your thing, and I get it, that's cute. I'm saying you want to be cute with your friends. I think also what we're seeing the landscape do is shift. And I was listening to you guys talk, and I was like, I am really conscious of not becoming an old person on social media. Like, I know I'm getting older, and I know, you know what I'm saying? And I don't want to sound like my parents. Well, we never did that growing up, but we used to. I don't want to start the second I start giving we used to, it's gonna piss me off. So I be keeping it cute. But I know like the landscape is changing, and I think having to sign up for a landscape that's going to continuously change, and you don't control how often it changes. Everybody's been trying to clock how often it changes. Sometimes it's months, sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's days. I've seen trends literally last hours. You know what I'm saying? And so keep your head on the swivel.
And
you
before
know,
we get into talking about
go ahead, friend. I have an unserious
no,
thing to say.
I was finna transition, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for fear of sounding like an auntie, because I don't want to sound that way, but I just want to say this popularity thing is not all it's cracked up to be. Not that it's not all it's cracked up to be, because it's lit. But I think that there's levels and layers to it. And I think if you don't have what you don't have now, you know, James Baldwin said a powerful thing, and I stick this with me all the time. I would be a fool to think I would go somewhere and not have to bring myself with me. So I think that it's just important for us to recognize that if you raggedy here, just because you have a couple more followers or you get a bunch of engagement, it does not change the level of you being raggedy. So I think that when we're doing these things, it's just important to remember, have a good time, have fun.
All right, well, we're back, guys. And I just want to say before we get into talking about what I want to talk about, it really kind of pissed me off because I be trying to get my videos about my real life to jump, and you scripted hoes keep getting your videos to jump. And I'm just trying to figure out how y'all figured out the algorithm before me. Anyway, moving along. So I don't know if we want to give a trigger warning for this topic. I think we should. We will talk about suicide, but mainly the conversation is about Black grief. We're getting into how Regina King spoke about the death of her son on Good Morning America recently. So you guys are going to see me cutting to the side so I can look at my notes so I can make sure I'm saying correct things. So don't mind me. Anyway, on January 19th, 2022. So this is what, just 2 years ago, she's coming or just having experienced the second anniversary of her son's passing. Regina King's son, Ian Alexander Jr., passed away from suicide at just 26 years old. Of course, this was a major loss for Regina, but she gave her first televised interview about it this last month on Good Morning America, and we've been seeing some of the clips resurface. Some of the feelings she expressed was that she and her family were devastated at the deepest level, and that her son was such a bright light who cared so deeply about the happiness of others. And I don't know about you guys, but in my personal experience with people who I know deal with suicidal ideation, that's often what people have to say, like that they are bright lights or that they are sources of energy or that they're caring and fun and high spirited. And I think that's such an interesting juxtaposition about how these people, you know, lead their lives. And she also said that while the family knew that Ian was struggling with depression, he didn't present in any way any raised flags that would lead them to think that he was considering suicide, which is also something that people say quite often. And it's also just so devastating because you don't know the signs. She's gone on to mention how angry with God she was. And I don't know if was is the current descriptor yet. I think she's still working through those feelings and the guilt that she herself experienced with this loss. Yeah. So it's got to be tough. I think we all, if you don't know who Regina King is by name, she was in The Harder They Fall. She's going to be starring in this upcoming movie about Shirley Caesar. Those are the things coming to my mind right now, but she's been in so many things. Like she was in Friday. You said what? Boondocks. She's a phenom for our community, and she is such an excellent and talented actor. She's also a Capricorn. I think her birthday the day right after mine, but you know, anyway, amazing woman. But I'm really glad that she gave us this. And I want to unpack that statement because this is such a personal thing. It's such a personal experience that Regina doesn't owe anybody anything on. But I think especially in our community, it's really great that she was able to share this piece with us to give
Yeah.
us a little bit, to give those of us who don't see themselves in community, who have dealt with children who have committed suicide, families, parents, because these aren't things that we talk about. Black families generally have the what is it called? I'm thinking of like a saying, but just have the general rule of thumb that what goes on in this house stays in the house, especially when it comes to mental issues, like to the point where you don't even need to see a therapist because what goes on in this house stays in this house, and that can be so detrimental to us. So I'm just really glad that she was able to serve as some sort of representation, even though that didn't have to be her goal. I just think it's really important to know that we're not required to give anything to anybody as public figures or anything. But yeah. Thoughts?
I think the first thing that comes to mind though, like with this, like before we get into more of the facts of it, is that child loss hits very different. And I think it's so powerful that this was even something that she was able to add language to that could be put on a public platform, because I had a friend who put a platform together a little while about losing her son, and it took her years to even get to the point of living in a reality of he's not here anymore. And so I think that something we speak about all the time as friends is that life keeps going. Nobody cares about the loss. Nobody cares about what you lost. They're expecting when's the next project or when's the next this. And so I think that there's just something really special about making a moment out of I'm still a person, I'm still a personality, I'm still somebody that you guys are expecting to see, and I'm bringing you guys in on that. So I just want to give her flowers for that, because I just think that's really, really big. So yeah.
For sure. Something that broke my heart about it, and I'll let you go in just a second, OBO, but I think it's a really beautiful place to put this. She shared a quote that said, "Grief is love with no place to go." And I feel like that speaks volume, and it makes me a little sad when you think about it, because that is it's a palpable and tangible way to think about grief.
Okay, so grief is tough. I think it's interesting about grief though is that because memories are built, so many things remind you of people, right? I think that's been the toughest part. I got a call. My grandmother passed away in December, and I got a call today from her life insurance. She had left me a little something, and it just wasn't top of mind, right? I think because that's the funny part about grief. You know, you are able to kind of move on, and life keeps going, like you were mentioning earlier, saying like, you know, life has this funny way of continuing, and you don't really have a choice in that. And so you have days where you don't really, think about that person. And one of my colleagues wrote a poem once, and I don't remember the exact words, but one part of the poem, he was talking about his friend died by suicide. And he says, I already hate myself for the day where I don't think about you. And he was kind of thinking about the fact that there's going to come a day where you don't cross my mind, and I'm uncomfortable with that as a reality. And I think so much about what grief is love with nowhere to go, but also the additive of like grief and guilt playing kind of that hand in hand, that working in tandem game. And I just think that it's beautiful for Regina to have the autonomy to take a second. I also think within the Black community, how we have to highlight the fact that most people have to get back in the fight. You don't even have a second to take, right? People are losing loved ones and going to work the next day. People are losing loved ones and having to show up to, still do the things. And I think it just becomes a really, really tough game of how we manage and appreciate grief. I think also, really quickly, we need more like unanimous off days, in my opinion, right? It's not just about like paternity and maternity leave. It's not just about, we need a lot of it should be baked into the reality that we need sanity days. We need, all those kinds of things, because it's not only people who have money in excess or what have you. People need time. It's a real thing.
There's somebody over there in the place where they make laws gunning for a 4-day work week. I forget who it is, but I literally just thought about that when you said that. But I just want to give us some facts. some factoids to think about before we get back into our thoughts and feelings. I want to say up until about maybe 10 years ago, and I feel old saying that, but therapy wasn't something that was well received in our community. A lot of us pushed things under the rug or onto Jesus and like had nowhere to work it out, to actually feel through it. So I have some stats here from the Suicide Prevention Resource Center that report on suicide in the Black community. They are the only federally supported resource center dedicated to suicide prevention. The following research is based off the years 2011 to 2020. So for Black adults, suicide rates peak during adolescence and young adulthood. That's 15 to 34 years old. The suicide rate for Black men is more than 3 times the rate of Black women. And I want us to put a pin in that. The Black suicide rate increased from 5.5 per 100,000 in 2011 to 7.7 per 100,000 in 2020. And the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Office of Minority Health reports that Black Americans living below the poverty level as compared to those over twice the poverty level are twice as likely to report serious psychological distress. So basically people with less money. And in 2020, suicide was the 3rd leading cause of death, respectively, for Black Africans ages 15 to 24. So when I say let's put a pin in it, go ahead.
Can I add one more stat to this?
Okay, sure.
LGBTQ teens consider suicide and make suicide attempts at about 4 times the national rate for all adolescents.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, you watch things like 13 Reasons Why. People make art to expose people to more people's stories, show how complicated things like this can be, just for the sake of people understanding more and being more outspoken about it. But you watch things like 13 Reasons Why, and you think that you'll be the friend to notice certain things. You think that you'll be the parent that makes sure like the door isn't closed, or the parent that when my daughter is storming around, slamming doors, I'm coming in to check, or like you're going to ask all the right questions. And the truth is no one's ever going to catch everything. But I remember a very scary moment that I had. I have a baby brother. I want to say he was like 14, 15 at the time. But I'm not in his close friends, but my boyfriend is. And he posted something that was really scary. And like, I didn't know what to do because I'm not in his close friends. So he didn't intend for me to see it. Yeah. And sometimes when people go through these things, they recluse, and it's very protective. And if someone breaks that barrier, it can make things worse, or it can make them draw even further away. And so I was really calling the middle child, his big brother, who has a closer relationship with him, calling a friend of mine who I know has more of a mentorship relationship with him, asking my boyfriend to text him and say, hey, just to respond back to the story, hey, everything cool. And eventually I got a chance to talk to my brother, and we talked through his feelings, and it seems like he is on a much better path. But part of the reason it scared me so much is that I knew him to not have a lot of friends in his adolescence. I knew him to be an outsider constantly. I knew him to not have people like show up for him in the way that he showed up for them. And so I think about even what you just said about LGBTQ youth, a lot of it has to do with community when you're younger, and either acceptance or rejection. And rejection is such a scary thing because you can't control who's going to reject the people that you love. And sometimes you may be privy to their sensitivity about rejection, or how much their rejection is actually affecting them, until it gets scary. And sometimes one of the biggest things that I felt guilty about, like immediately, was the fact that I'm big sis living my life, doing adult things, and we check in every now and then. And since then, I've made more an effort to just be in relationship with my brothers, but also feeling the guilt of having a life and paying attention to all the things going on in my personal life that affect my own mental health and just whatever my own navigation. That's the other to say. It's just really hard. It can be very hard, period, because one thing these statistics don't share is just what the makeup of people who suffer from depression, what the psychological makeup of people who suffer from depression can look like, because there's nothing you can do. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Have you guys had a experience where you've had to challenge yourself in how you're there and how you pay attention and how you show up for friends or family?
It's interesting when I think about. Go ahead, Sam.
No, go ahead. I'll say what I got.
It's interesting. I don't consider myself someone who's had suicidal ideations, but I consider me but I had seasons in my life where I did not want to be here anymore. You know what I mean? But I never thought about taking my own life. But there was seasons in my life where I was definitely like, "Hey God, like if it's my time is up, I'm not gonna trip. I'm not gonna fight back. Like, if it's my time to go, I'm cool with it." And I think we have to untaboo a lot of these topics, man. A lot of this become so taboo to discuss that people don't even know they're drifting. And I think most people's fear is feeling othered, especially when you're young. So you're like, if it's so taboo, you don't want to touch it, but you kind of need to touch it to kind of organize your thoughts in a way that doesn't make you feel so othered. So it's like a catch-22. But I've lost a few friends to suicide, and I think when you're young, you're just
Can I
so.
ask?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But
Friends or people you know?
both teammates. One of my teammates took his life. And I think maybe because I've always been kind of bright in energy, but very dim on the inside. So it wasn't a big like OMG for me. You know what I mean? Because I kind of understood very young what it was like to perform, but also have a very different experience of self on the inside. And so, but I think as an adult, I now know. And maybe that's why I'm so helpful, but I guess because I'm very big on like throwing people a bone, because I recognize that most people probably are not going to communicate what they need. And again, mine is more projection, to be honest, because I don't communicate what I need ever. And so I know that I'm not the only person who's built like this. And so I think I'm very mindful of just, you ain't say it, but you probably want it. Like, you ain't bring it up, but you probably need a little, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm not saying this is a challenge for everybody around to make sure that you go out of your way for everybody beside you. But I am saying there is a charge to the world to be mindful of the humanity of people who you don't know. And you can, I guess, see fit what that looks like. But I think we have to be mindful of the humanity of all people.
Yeah. So I was gonna say too, and what you said lends perfectly to what I was gonna share is earlier you talked about us having in the workforce more days other than just the basic maternity, PTO, whatever. But having
Columbus
days
Day.
like just having days that lend to the fact that we are human beings and we have so many different emotions and things that require us to want to disconnect or to have time to ourselves. Something that I struggled with for a very long time. So I struggled with depression. And when I would have those seasons, my biggest thing would be life feels like a merry-go-round and I want to get off. Like that's what it is. Doesn't mean necessarily that I don't want to be here anymore, especially because most of those moments had kids. And so of course I want to be here to see my babies grow up. But it feels like everything just keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. And I just need a second. Like I'm getting dizzy, I'm getting stressed, I'm getting overwhelmed.
Can you dive into what merry-go-round means to you and what getting off means to you? Can you clarify that?
Okay. So merry-go-round, and even for those of you who've ever been on one, it literally feels like that to me. Like I'm standing in a place where not only are things moving one way as if the days keep going over and over, but then if you're on a merry-go-round, you know that like the animals go up and down, or sometimes you have spinning pots that are spinning. So not only are the days continuing to happen every day, there are so many elements a part of those days. And if you've ever, again, stood on a merry-go-round and not participated in it, it can be very disorienting. And so I used to feel very overstimulated, very disoriented, very just like there's too much going on. And I want to get off, meaning that do what you got to do, life continue to happen, but I just want to pause. I just really need to pause. And I remember I first found that language with my partner when I was trying to explain to him, because he is not a person that really understands mental health or lack thereof. He's a very black and white kind of guy. So when he would try to understand my emotions, that was the best way that I could explain it to him, is that life is really just too much for me. And it's not that I don't want to be here. I don't want to scare you, but I can't do this right now. I don't have, I just don't have the tools. I don't feel equipped to handle this. But I share that to say that when it comes to suicidal ideation, I think it's important for us to create language for, it's not just that because some people don't want to be here anymore, but some people just don't have the language to say that I need a break. I can't do this right
Was
now.
there shame in that for you? Sorry, Lynette.
Yes.
Okay, there was shame. Okay. Okay.
There was so much shame because I'm from a Caribbean family. And it's one thing that not only am I from a Caribbean family, but I'm from a country family. And I think country is something that is universal. If you've ever been to the countryside of anywhere, you understand that people kind of think a little more, I don't want to say simple. I can speak about my family. They're more, we wake up, we tend to the farm, we get things done that need to be done.
Like grassroots.
Yeah, we're not sitting down and having tea and talking about our feelings. So for me to have all of these heavy emotions, these aren't things that I thought that I could even share with my family, until one day I did share it. I didn't even start the sharing. My mother shared with me that when she was younger, she had a moment where she was having experiences in the home that felt a lot for her. And she said, and I'm not gonna, put her story out there, but she had a moment where she was just like me. It's not that I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to have this experience anymore. And she said something stopped her. And she ended up just, it went out of her mind for a while. And she said she remembers that moment often because she's so grateful for having her kids. And she thinks about, if I had done that, I wouldn't have had my kids. So
I keep telling y'all.
Yeah.
I was only gonna say that I feel like this connects directly to some of the things that we said last week and maybe even the week before that about the way we have to live our lives does not leave room for people who can't just ride the merry-go-round, whether that be of capitalism, whatever the hell we got going on, mainly capitalism driving the forces of everything else, but having those real feelings of anxiety every day. Like when you look at what the major causes is, one of them is poverty, period. And like the poverty line keeps raising, even for people who might have thought they were middle class, like when they started their job or got their salary rates. But the way inflation is attacking us left and right, and just so many things politically, we're on a merry-go-round. And like I completely, as soon as you said it, I'm really glad that you did that. Obia, you asked her to say what that meant for her, because I felt there were so many details in there that were important. Even to say if you are standing on it and not participating is disorienting, because even to take a step back and look at it all, it feels so overwhelming. And my prayers a lot recently have been asking God to teach me how to cast my cares on him. Like I can't hide. I can't not be on social media like for the rest of my life, especially if that's the work that I'm doing. I can't hide from it. Every time I ride down the street and I see unhoused people or people with signs, whether it's families, whether it's veterans, whether it's just people who are simply unhoused. And I saw a very young and attractive young man with a sign, and I didn't read it, but I was just thinking about how the poisons of the world are affecting more and more of us and coming to grab more and more of us, and you can't escape it. And I don't know if I'm an empath or what, but my heart literally sinks anytime I'm made aware of any treachery in the world, of any pain, any sorrow in the world. And I don't know how to give that to God. I feel like I'm supposed to feel it, because if I didn't feel it, I wouldn't want to do anything about it. but how do I not carry that with me to the point where it's debilitating? And that's just me on this very surface level of just looking at the world. So just imagine people who are dealing with this as well. And so when you got to talking about, Ovia said earlier about us having those days, like there should be institutions, like rehab shouldn't just be for people who are on drugs or who are addicted to alcohol. It shouldn't just be for addicts. Like where are the medical institutions or mental institutions for us when we need a break, when we need to get off the merry-go-round and like have tools for how to go back and deal with life a little bit better or have more strategies to navigate. And for some of us, the chemical imbalance doesn't allow for that. But I think it points back to what we said last week about there not being suitable health care for us. Like this world is not set up for us to thrive or to even like have an existence of happiness. So we talk about shame, we talk about stigma, we talk about rejection, all these things that are affecting the young people because the age range is 15 to 24. But even the stuff that you said, OBO, I feel like every time I've heard about a very young child committing suicide, that child was queer. That child was getting beat up in the bathroom. And like how is that getting to kids? How is that nastiness getting to kids to where they're not even aware that my actions could cause someone to not want to be here anymore?
So I don't know where this my comment here lives or if it helps or does anything, but even to the point of where are these kind of institutions for wellness, right? They do exist. Mm-hmm. Like for example, I was reading a novel the other day that referenced this it's a company that allows people to come in and nap, and then they have like these things that kind of flow from the air, usually some kind of like mist or scent that has maybe
aromatherapy
or correct. Yeah, well, no, this was a sleeping agent, so it's like a drug-free sleeping aid kind of thing. Okay. But I just say that to say these things do exist, right? But when you're a kid whose parents don't have 2 nickels to rub together and 2 minutes to look at you in the face, where do you have access to these things, right? Or even the adults that are the ones without 2 nickels to rub together, working 2-3 jobs, doing this, doing that, running here, running there. We don't have time. And I think that the bigger question is, we know that there are solutions for this. There are solutions for wellness. There are institutions that allow people to disconnect, that allow people to breathe deeper, that allow people to just have moments of quiet and moments of release. But where's the part in our government where we're saying that this is an essential? When you travel to other countries, like, we don't talk about this, but we see things like Jeju Spa, right? Spa land and stuff like that. That is a norm in their culture. That's for us, that's like, oh, let's go on a spa day. For them, it's like another day in life. We're going to the caves. We're going to do steam. We're going to self-care is a part of the culture because you need people who are okay in order to have a productive society. But in our culture, the capitalism merry-go-round is so big that yes, it's important to make money, but most of us want to make money because we want to be able to get to a place of wellness.
Hello?
So
yeah. I think that's so important, and it brings up another distinction for me, and I want us to be able to transition to talking about like grief itself. But I think because most of these spas are run by Asian communities, and I don't always know what techniques are from what ethnicity, so forgive me for my ignorance, but something that we know about Eastern culture is that even the way they practice religion and spirituality is different. And I think it's something to be said that us practicing these wellness techniques isn't just for our self-care. We don't even I can't speak for them, but it's not even thought in the lens of like, this is my self-care outside of my daily routines. These are things that I do to stay in tune with my spirit, in tune with the things around me, like culturally. And I think that shows a very large difference in religious and spiritual doctrine that is designed for the wellness of the individual versus the empowerment of an institution, which is what we have over here in Western civilization and religion. So that was just like a little tidbit that I noted. But I do want to come off for just a second and transition to how the people around the individuals that we've lost deal with grief. And so just thinking about OBO, you just lost your grandmother. I've lost my grandfather. I've lost a couple people around me actually. And I'm just wondering how we deal with grief there as opposed to how we deal with grief in these situations that seem more stigmatized. Because grief can be communal. Grief is like allowed for me, in my perspective, grief is allowed in the room where the body is. Because even when you are done with that piece, when you put them in the ground, now it's time for the repast for us to eat and be merry. And, you know, maybe the direct family, the immediate family gets to have their spurts of grief. But like, whew, it's almost like we got that over with, you know, and that's not really how grief works. So I just wondered how you guys experiences were.
Yeah, I feel like individualism to me is like a catch-22. And I bring individuality in this because I think people sometimes will clock how you're supposed to grieve, right? Based on the person. And I think it doesn't give people the room to grieve how they truly need to. I think people, for me specifically, my grandmother was the first person who passed away that I was truly close to, right? And I've had friends pass away, but you know, it wasn't as close and as intimate of a relationship as my grandmother, who I have tattooed on my back. She's my first tattoo and the things. And so when a piece of me was like, I know I need to look extremely sad to validate my care for her to the people around me. Because if I don't look sad, if I don't come off weary, then it's going to come off as if I didn't care. But I think giving people the autonomy to grieve how they grieve, whatever that may look like. And I think sometimes we're policing the ways in which people show up. Some folks need to dive into work. Some folks need a second from it. Some folks need to laugh. Some folks need to cry. And so for me, it was weird because I felt very sad, but I then had the luxury of being able to just kind of shut things down for a little minute and kind of just tend to the way that I felt, which is again back to this conversation about poverty and the things that people don't have to be able to do the things. But my personal experience with grief has been very interesting. But I will say this though, I don't think you lose people. I just don't. I said this in a tidbit I did on social, but I really believe you become people. I really believe that. I believe people stick with you. And even when I listened to Regina King, I'm saying like I know her interview, it was like, I know there's some isms of your son that's gonna stay with you for the rest of your life. And there's some pieces of his heart that you can't get out of you. And I think likewise the people that we lose that are interconnected into us, you don't really lose them. I know we want people in the physical, I'm not negating that, but with myself specifically and my grandmother specifically, my grandmother gave me God, right? I didn't know God existed until she told me who he was. And so you kind of can't go nowhere, sis. and there's a beauty in that for me. I found solace in that. And so I think for anybody who's navigating grief, for me, it's like search for what your solace is. Like there's no rubric, in my opinion, to personal grief. It's just giving yourself the autonomy to feel whatever those things are and for however long you do.
For me, I think, and I'm gonna try to say this the way that I feel it and the way that it's coming to me. To me, grief is a communal meal, right? But we try to eat it all in one day by ourselves. And it is not a thing that you can have in one sitting. It is a thing that you have to prepare for. It is a thing that you have to get seated in a little bit. And it is a thing that you have to allow to sit until you can learn how to navigate it for yourself and who to share it with and who to keep it from. So one example of that for me is So my grandfather is still living. He's somebody that I'm very close with. But my first understanding of death, I think I've spoken to you guys about this before, is me recognizing, I went to Sunday school. We talked about death and things like that. And I remember the first time that I recognized that at some point I will not have my grandfather anymore. And it traumatized me. And I was angry when Regina King talks about being angry with God. My anger was there because who else are you angry with, right? In my brain, it was like, why would you allow me to love someone this much and then take them? I hated that dynamic because I couldn't understand it. And what I've learned to do every single day from then, my grandfather got sick a couple years ago, and since then he's exhibited some signs of dementia. So he's had times where he said very mean things, where he's not been himself. And grief is not just losing a person physically, but it's losing parts of a person that you used to know and having to learn how to deal with them in new seasons. And so in times that I've had to sit and recognize that the grandfather that I experienced from ages, let's say even 14 to 21, I don't have that version of him anymore. And I miss him sometimes, but I'm grateful for what that was. And now the grandfather that I have now is necessary for the things it's necessary for, but I'm also learning to also prepare myself for the fact that one day I won't have him in the physical form anymore. And what will that look like? And I think we dissociate ourselves a lot from this idea of death. People will not be here forever. And that is one thing that we can depend on. The people that we love, the people that we can call easily, the people that are so fabricated into our day-to-day lives will someday maybe not be here in one way or the other. And it is important for us to not get so comfortable with how our lives are today that when the loss happens, we are shocked and we are just completely at a standstill to the point that we don't know at all what to do, because almost every single death is a surprise, unfortunately.
What does that prep look like? You said prep. How do you prep for grief? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So a way that I'm prepping currently, because I know that if I do lose my grandfather, because I could go first, God willing I don't, but that's the reality. If I do lose him, I know it's going to be one of the hardest things that I will ever have to deal with in life. So something that I do is, and this just works for me, every time we have a conversation, I soak myself in it like it's our last one. Every time. No matter how good, no matter how bad, because sometimes we argue, we get into it. But I still make sure that I am my authentic self with him, that if we end a conversation and it doesn't end real great, I'm sitting with the fact that if this is the last time you speak to this man, you feel good about what was just said? Do you feel good about where you are? Do you feel, I just soak myself into that moment and allow myself to fully experience it. And I also take advantage. I take a lot of advantage over what questions I can ask him now, over what things I can discuss with him now, so that I don't miss out when I can't.
I love that. It's kind of like cherish the person, and hone in those moments. That's what it sounds like you're saying. Like really
be a part of it, be present with it.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that's deep. And it makes me think of I have these like random fits of, I guess, exactly what you experienced, but I have these random fits of understanding that I could lose the people around me like any day, for anything. And it actually ties into some other stuff we have in these notes about the grief we kind of consistently endure as Black people, because there's this sort of, I don't even want to call it special, but very particular state of grieving when we have people die on the stage. but also this sense of impending grief, because knowing what we are at risk of, and two, far more than any other group of people, like, it's scary, especially being the only girl, like having four brothers, actually, my father, being in partnership with my person, and being so connected to it and enmeshed in him, like that thought is very scary. But, I'm so inundated with everyday life that my short-term memory, and sometimes even my long-term memory, gets real choppy. And hearing what you just said about how you are with your grandfather, it just makes me even more motivated to journal, and not just for myself, but like, this is how I experienced this person this week, you know, like recording them. Oh, recording them. Because I think the biggest thing that scares me about losing people is forgetting them. Yeah, it's forgetting things, or having to scrounge through memories to just try to pull all the best pieces you want to remember. So I'm sorry, I don't know why I got emotional about that, but I feel like that's a really good tool. That's a really good tool. So thank you.
I'm super macabre about it, like super, because I used to tell my dad, like, if he passes away, I'm jumping in the joint with him. We gonna just go together.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Okay.
But which is crazy. I did this about 3 years ago. My dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer when I was in middle school. I don't
Mm,
often, I don't know if I shared that before, but anyways, yeah, I don't talk about it often. My dad, most people don't even know that. It's not funny when it comes to my dad. I'm not even joking. Like, I don't play that, And so I had to imagine my dad dead, which I
mm,
know sounds really, really dark, but I needed to get it in my body. I just did, because I think I was just about to lose my mind about the thought of my dad no longer being here. And it was like, the thought of it was really, really difficult, right? And so I remember having this moment with myself where I was just like, okay, like, he's gone. And just, I mean, talking about ball in my eyes, the
mm,
things, because that's going to be the hardest one to date. But to Sim's point a little bit, there's this really, really interesting, like, thing about grief when nostalgia comes in,
mm,
right? And I think, because I grieved my college friends. I had 3 friends in college who were friends the entire time, and all straight guys. And when I came out, it just kind of, child, they said keep it. And
mm,
after that, I grieved that relationship because I just enjoyed them so much. But I think
mm.
after the grief came the nostalgia, came the, yeah, remember when we. And I think with my dad, it was similar. I'm not saying visualize that people did. I'm not saying that at all. But for me, it was like a very tough thing. So I'm anticipating the actual grief of loss being even more difficult. But I think, again, just finding solace in the memory of the people. To your point, Lene, about like journaling and remembering and things.
Yeah, and it's really funny. I don't. I think you got to make space for comedy in any traumatic thing. So I think it's really funny how I've experienced grief, when only two people that would elicit like a gut wrenching and heart wrenching response to their death have passed from me. That's my grandfather and a close friend of mine when I was in college, or actually when I had just graduated college. And both times, even with my grandfather, I broke down each time. We thought it was it. And he was always sick, he was frail, for lack of better words, like kind of falling apart. And one time he had fallen out of a hospital bed and hit his head, and I thought that was it. And I remember just like sinking into the floor, at work teaching. There were a couple of other moments, and I actually got the call. And when I got it, I said, okay, okay. And I think it was in the middle of homecoming. So I decided to go drink and have a good time. And my friends didn't know how to be there for me because I just lost my granddad. And when my friend died, when I got the phone call, I sunk into the floor once again, like in the middle of the street, like on campus somewhere. Um, but when I saw both of them in their casket, I didn't have any emotion. Like, I thought that's where it was supposed to come. I thought like being in the room with all of it was gonna bring the tears because, like you said, it's a communal meal and we try to eat it in one day. And like, I
Mm,
expected the grief to come in those times and it did not. And it doesn't really. I think there are times where tears will reach up at the back of my eyes and subside, not because I don't want to feel it, but because that's like the extent to that part of my grief. And
mm,
I've always I've
mm,
explained it to when people have asked me how I've been dealing with it is I don't really feel like they're gone. Like they're not I don't what does dead mean? Like dead ceased to have meaning to me once I saw their shells because they're just not here anymore. Like it just feels like I haven't seen them in a long time. And it's strange.
mm.
And I think that's okay because what we were
Yeah.
saying when we first got into this conversation is everybody's so focused on what they think grief is supposed to look like for certain individuals and it's just not, and it's so surprising. And there are certain stages of grief, and if you do not know them, there's a Kubler-Ross model of grief, and it goes denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you can gather what those things mean just from their titles. But what's really interesting, like I mentioned earlier, Black people have a very interesting additive on top of how we grieve because of the way we grieve on global stages so many times that a lot of those stages we don't even have access to. And so there is an article that talks about what stages we don't get access to, and I wonder if you guys agree. It says one, we don't get to the denial stage because a lot of us are being viciously killed right in front of our faces, or the conditions of our death are so real and like palpable for us that what are we denying? You know, we don't get to go through bargaining, which is where one would start to make deals with themselves or maybe God to feel better, like simply just to feel better, because we're often making these deals with, and we're not even making deals. Like we don't get a bargaining chip in the ways that we lose each other. Like there's
Mm.
nothing we feel like we can control, especially when the gods in these situations might be the police system or a health system or mental health resources that we don't have access to.
Yeah.
And then the acceptance for us would mean that we implicitly accept all of these things. Like we just take them, we charge them to the game. We say that these are facts of life, and that's what an acceptance type, what the acceptance phase is like. I think generally we can say that yes, death is a fact of life and we can accept that. But in our communities, the way death comes about, a lot of us, unfortunately, a lot is strong because I don't have the numbers to support, but we know that for various reasons, whether it be cultural eating habits, cultural health, physical health, maintenance, whatever, we don't get to just die of natural causes or die in our sleep or die of old age. A lot of us, we see a lot of us die sooner for other reasons. So I just thought that was interesting. I think you can look at it on either hand because there is a difference in deaths that affect individuals and deaths that affect us communally. And I think for sure on the communal stage, we don't get access to those stages. But I think individually we can. Sometimes individually we don't, given the circumstance.
I could definitely see a world where we don't have access to denial. I think a lot of that also, I think it has to do with systemic oppression, right? When you think
Yeah.
about having to like paying for a funeral, like the arrangements and all the things being a very real reality very soon. And so you jump into having to come pull together resources to even have a proper burial that a lot of people don't have access to. And so it's not just a simple, oh, they have life insurance policy, we're gonna take out of that, and we're gonna do it. It's not that simple for everybody. Everybody's gonna have those
Mm-hmm.
realities. Everybody's not reading a will that has, where everybody's getting stuff from. It's just not that simple for a lot of communities. And so I think that's a very really real thing, And not to derail, but a quick thing before I forget, a little funny part of my grief process was, when you say going up to the casket, whoever did my makeup, my grandmother's makeup, I still want to fight. I still want to fight. I
Okay.
still want to fight.
Okay.
I still want to go up with her. And they wouldn't tell me who it was, but I still want to fight. I want to fight today, tomorrow, and the next day. Because
I have an
I don't know who that
attitude.
was.
I have attitude that you just said that they wouldn't tell me who it was. So you had enough of a problem to mention it to the people in attendance and ask questions.
My dad was pissed. He said, "I don't know who this woman is. Neither do I." I'm talking about, it wasn't. They could have gave my sis a little blush. They really could have. They really could have got my sis right, and they really didn't. And so for me, it was like
Mm.
I just wanted to be like, Granny, they did you dirty. I'm not gonna lie. They really did. They did you dirty. I'm not gonna hold you.
I just want to share real quick. Because I feel like that's important. It's important to have these moments where we speak about these things that we would speak about with our loved ones. Like if they were here, like they played. And it reminds me of, in my culture in Jamaica, we have something called the nine night. And it originated as a series of 9 nights where you celebrated, you grieved before the funeral. And so one thing that I love, and I tell people this all the time, my favorite part about my family specifically is our storytelling. We tell so many stories. Like there are stories for days about just the things that have happened, and storytelling is something that's very a part of 9 nights. Now, in more modern Jamaican cultures, they may not do the full 9 nights anymore, but they always have a 9 night, which is a celebration. It's a party. There's food. There's dancing.
Why
There's people
9?
that say it again.
Why 9? Why the number 9? Is there some
I will
reason
ask
to
my
that?
mom, but there is something spiritually
Okay.
significant
Okay.
I
about the
think they had something like that in the show Black Cake. There was an episode where an old friend came and said we need to have a 9 night, and she said why in the show, but I think it has something to do with if the people around haven't like released the spirit by the 9 night, it'll be restless, something like that. But
Did you read the
I think
book? I heard the book was good.
I did not. I didn't know it was
I
a
would
book.
look
Does
into
that make
that
sense?
book for a good book right now. But I think I do remember my mother saying something about that. It has to do with prioritizing the transition of the spirit. And so that's what happens. But one thing that we do that's important for that process, you got to humanize this experience, right? Because it's not just that this person is now a dead person. They are a life. And it's they are a life that encompasses so many layers and levels. It's not just sadness. So I remember even when my grandmother passed, that was the hardest thing in the world for my mom. But one thing that she was happy about is she was like, my mama looked so beautiful when she passed. She looked so beautiful. And it was something that, because we knew if she didn't look peaceful, we wouldn't be peaceful because she didn't play that. Like that was something that was just very big for her. And so it was something that we were able to laugh about. It was something we were able to feel good about. And I think even for the people listening to this, that's an important part of grief, is just having some laughter in there and having some moments where you're real about what is going on. So, yeah.
Grief has been with us and played a very significant role in the lives and makeup and family familiar structure of Black people, period. And specifically those of us who ended up over here in America, given the slave trade and given the institution of Western slavery, and given how we had to like process it quickly and keep on moving and keep on pushing. And actually, I forgot that we had put a pin in that one stat that Black men committed suicide at 3 times the rate of Black women. And I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that. But I really think, and not like this is no flex at all. But I do think that a reason a disparity would exist like that, a gender disparity would exist like that, is because not the balloons coming during this time, so inappropriate, I'm so sorry. But it's because Black women have been socialized to just let things fall off their shoulders and keep working and keep moving and keep caring, and also being the structure that so much family is counting on and rooted into, that suicide may seem 3 times less accessible.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not feeling
I think I thought about it in the reverse, actually. I thought that like men were carrying so much of the family structure that they felt the pressure to show up in a way that maybe men don't. And I feel like only as of recent we're seeing men be more comfortable saying I can't. But I think for so long, even when men couldn't, I don't think men felt comfortable saying I don't have the whatever. I even know when I was younger, I had some not younger, when I was in my early 20s, I had friends who were in relationships with women who could, but wanted to be this version of man that didn't allow and would be suffering so much on the inside, right? Like wanting to provide a lifestyle for a woman who hasn't even told you that she wants it, but just this societal trope of man being this grounding and this provider and this protector and these things. And I think I could see a man feeling like I'm falling short. I'm about to just peace on out of here. And I think I've always been curious about parents as a person who's dealt with a parent who has tried to commit suicide. I've always been curious about my own selfishness as it relates to that, right? Because in my head, I'm like, I had a parent who tried to commit suicide when I was 13, and again when I was in my mid 20s, and I think about how I made it so much about me emotionally, right? My emotions immediately went to like, well, what about me, and how could you leave me, and what would you think? You know what I'm saying? And I think that I didn't give enough credence and room for the pressures that individuals face outside of what their responsibilities are.
I think there's two sides to that coin because I agree with both statements.
I was just about to say.
And because there is a world and where Black women live and exist, and this is just what it is, and this is life, and this is what I have to do, and a world where Black men also exist in that way. But something that's interesting for me, and I don't know why the first thing that I thought about was queerness, but the first thing that came to mind for me is that, say for example, we're dealing with a person who is having an identity struggle, right? It is easier for a woman to go to her friends and say, girl, I just feel like I've had this desire lately, or I've kind of felt out of place. Like, I feel like I'm wearing all these like girly clothes, or I feel like I'm having attraction to women, or whatever it is, right? We can have those conversations with our friends, and it either be two things. Girl, go ahead. You probably just, want to try a little something different. There's nothing wrong with that. You can even bring up to your man, have a threesome or blah, 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 right? Or it's just like, if that's who you are, go for it. Like, what's holding you back? Maybe this isn't what you want anymore. Do you know how difficult it is for a straight man to say to his straight man friends, I'm feeling like the desire with my woman sexually is not there, and I'm having a different kind of desire, or I've always had that kind of desire. We don't leave room for our straight Black men to have these conversations, or just our Black men, period, however they identify, to have these conversations of there's something internally inside of me that I don't know how to place a finger on. And, I talk to you guys all the time about, I can't wait for the world to get to a place where we can get over ourselves, because I think the sad part about it too, just in this issue specifically, is that some people literally have a desire to be more feminine and no desire to have relations with the same sex. But there's no space that we allow for them to just say that this is what my desire is, this is what it is. Or some people have no desire, who are masculine, or they feel like they're supposed to be masculine to be more feminine, but they do have a desire. Like, there's so many things that come with identity. There's so many things that come with a need to be free. And then the last thing I want to say on top of that is, like, even when we're not thinking about queerness, when we're thinking about emotions, period, women can vent, we can cry, we have somebody to do that to. Even if we break down and cry in the middle of the thing, like, it's normal. You're a girl. You're crying. When a man breaks down and cries, we tear that man apart, either on social media or in the room. We don't know what to do with it. We feel uncomfortable. We walk away. Like, and I dare to ask the question for those of you who have Black men in your lives. When is the last time you held that man and asked him how he felt? Not how he felt in relation to you, how he felt. What is your heart feel like right now? What does your spirit feel like right now? What do you need? What kind of thoughts are you holding, without relation of how you are connected to that? Because the moment that he says, I'm not feeling okay, you begin to think, is it me? Or is it something that, like, we don't allow them to just, so I can understand that.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it, because that's exactly what I was gonna lean into. But I do think two things can be true. And for that very last thing that you said as well, I want to read this tweet before we close out this segment and get into our maintenance check, and ask you guys a question, because I have a creative answer. But I can't read her whole name, so it's just at Dr. Alfie, Alfie. She says Black grief is deep, it is far reaching, back to the stolen bodies of the motherland, though through the chains on these shores, into the daily humiliations etched into the laws of this land, and through the heartbreak of yet another young life stolen needlessly. Hashtag we are tired. I just feel like that encapsulated all the beat points that we went through in this episode, talking about
Yeah.
this. But on the other side of grief, there is celebration of life. And hearing you guys talk, I've just thought so much about how people would want to be remembered, would want their ceremonies to go. And I wanted to ask you, what type of ceremony do you want? When you pass, if you could let the people around you know how you'd like your situation to go, what would you want?
You want me to go, Sam? You looking at me? Oh, sing down.
Got it.
I have yet myself to go to it. Go ahead.
What of those of us who can't sing, are we allowed to sing as well?
No, be quiet. Be quiet.
Got it.
I have yet to go to a funeral where the singing is superb. I want superb singing. Listen. I need fantastic singing. No, be quiet.
He said be quiet, Sam.
Hush.
These are his wishes. These are
You
his
have to
wishes,
hush.
not ours.
Like, this is not one of those things. Like, this is like my sis. I need her like dark elbows. I need like thick feet. I need like pretty smile. I need like a shortcut. I need hands on the mic. I need singing to happen. I'm not playing. Outside of that, you can cremate me. I'm not tripping on actually physically being there because I probably will live long and I don't want them to play with me on the makeup front. You see what I'm saying? Just go ahead and put me in a cute urn. I'm trauma at this point.
What's
Put me
the
in a
urn
cute
given?
You know, I thought about this.
Okay.
And I personally, myself, that's all I got to the end. That's what I found out. But I would like it to be like a color. But then I was thinking, what's the point? Because I don't know who I would give it to if I'm not partnered. So am I partnered going to just throw me over a cute little mountain situation? Like just throw me into the wolves. You know what I'm saying? And just let me spread across the earth. But again, all that's secondary to the singing. Make sure the singing is happening.
Got it. We'll see who we can book.
Absolutely. And if I don't outlive Brandy, buzz her line. Thank you.
All right.
For sure.
I definitely want a celebration of life. That is all that I want. I see beach. I see lanterns of little notes flying up. I see white, just happiness. I say that because
You want them happy?
I'm gonna tell you why. Even if it's not happy, I want release. I want the whatever that. I think the hardest part of grieving is that moment. Like while we were talking, I was thinking about, what's the hardest part for me when I think about my grandpa, right? When that happens, is that moment where I realize I'm gonna miss you so much, right? And so for those people, for that moment for me, with people feeling like I'm gonna miss you, I want them to be able to release that, for them to just exhale. And I think a great place for us to exhale is by the water. And so when I think of my passing, I know that I don't want the people that I love to feel heaviness. I want them to feel release. And I think, and that's it. What about you? Okay.
I don't know what I want the people to feel. I don't know if I necessarily care what they feel. And I don't even mean that in a like dismissive kind of way. But I just mean people are going to process how they process. I do want a celebration of life. But I just think it depends on who it is, but the biggest thing that I want is I don't want to be buried in a casket and I don't want to be cremated. I want to be buried in one of those
Trees.
seed pods. hmm And I want to grow into a little tree. I'm really big with I'm really big on us going back into the earth from where we came, but in a way that is like healthy for the earth, but also like planting roots. And you guys know me, so I feel like this makes a lot of sense, but I feel like it's the first time I'm saying this part, but like planting roots and like having somewhere for I want to be an ancestor. I want to be a tangible ancestor for like my kids and my grandkids, like for my partner to have somewhere to place their grief as well when they need
You know
to.
where?
It depends where you're allowed to do it. I think you're allowed to do it in a cemetery freely, but if like for a whole body part, like if they were to put me in a fetal position, I think I'd have to go in a cemetery unless it's because I don't think you can be in a neighborhood. But if I were to be still cremated, but my urn was planted in my whatever, that could be in the backyard, and I would prefer to be like on family property.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do know that in cemeteries they be uprooting people, they be putting people on top of people, and I don't know if cemeteries are all right. I don't know how people are doing on the other side of cemeteries, you know. So I want to be close to my family. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah. Y'all can come
Yeah.
visit my tree.
If we're here too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Anyways, so we'll be right back and we'll tell you how we're doing.
And it's time for maintenance check. Ding. We'll work on it. So before we get up out of here, how you guys feeling? What's happening? Maintenance check
I
in
can't wait
life.
to go
I want
back.
some news. I want some news. And matter of fact, I'm gonna start you guys out. I'm gonna start with Sim because we done cut the hair. Can we get
Okay.
into like just how that is, how that experience is for us, how we feeling this week? Because that was kind of a new thing, right?
Yeah. So I was literally in the middle, and I was talking to you guys about this like last week. I was talking to this girl. She wanted me to model for her brand. And she was like, "Yeah, do you want to do bundles? You want to do a unit? Yada yada yada." And I was like, "Okay, let's go ahead and get a." And then something inside me was like, "Girl, are you just gonna live for these brands?" And I don't want to call they money and they things little, but
Yeah.
I think that when you get into content creation and you get into the point where you can make a little coin here and there, like you get so obsessed with, okay, everything that I eat, live, and breathe can be paid for. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, I want to cut
Mm.
my hair. I'm so tired of curling and blow drying and wrapping and this and that. And when I think about my most productive times and my prettiest eras, it's been when my hair is cut. I love I love my hair being cut. I also love when, my kids are able to touch my hair or my partner is able
Mm.
to touch my hair. And you can't do that when you got a bunch of clip-ins and bundles and all of this type of stuff going on. So I didn't tell my man that I was cutting my hair. And it's
Oh, I didn't
funny
know
because
that.
I did not tell him, but he had been asking, like, every couple weeks or so, he would be like, "So, what do you think you're gonna do with your hair next week? Like, have you been thinking of getting a shortcut or blah, 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 like casually?" And I'd be like,
He's
"No,
been sick
I think
of
I'll
it.
do that." And so I told him one day, I was like, "I'm going to the hair salon," and he knows my salon, and he didn't ask me what I was doing. He didn't ask me how much time I needed. And usually he's like, "All right, you going to the salon? It's gonna be an all day thing." He just let me go, and I didn't say anything. And I called him after I did it, and his face like lit up, like he was
Mm.
so excited. And I've received so much love from people who've been like, "I love shortcut Sim. I love short hair Sim. I love this hair." Like, and I feel good. I feel
Mm.
like so much has happened over the past couple of months. Like I was literally riding on a wing of a prayer when this year started, and I'm
Yeah.
finally starting to feel my footing. I'm able to
Mm.
do the things that make me happy again. I'm able to just look forward to things. And cutting my hair was just such perfect timing for that, for a new version of myself. And it's also the shortest I've cut my hair. So yeah, it's good.
I love that. I love when you said when you showed us, it was like while we get off the phone, you were like, I feel pretty. And it was something about you saying that was like, ah, she's like really in her beat. So I appreciate that. Like, yeah, it was, I was, yeah. Anyways, you know what's crazy, Lene, when I think about like you currently, I think about how you have it. I'm trying to find a different word other than complain, but complain already came out of my mouth, so here we are. But I feel like we
Wow.
went through a season.
Facial expressions, Lene, as you anticipate what he's gonna say. Go ahead.
But you know, we went through that season of like you kind of like operating in worry, right? And like choosing God in your worry, which is very interesting. So it's cool to see like you now. And I wonder, like, have you had a shift in acknowledging that shift, right? Like, because there was a time where every time we managed checked you, you was giving, you know, okay, like, you know, it was like that. And I think like dropping your products and like doing your things, you had that shift. And so it's like, are you feeling that shift? Like, are you seeing that turn? Is it still the same energy? What's happening?
Yeah. I use very specific language with Sam that I'll use offline, but I feel like I'm in a very specific season of my life that I prayed for. And I'll just give an example. I was talking to a skincare company that I'm working with. Well, actually, I don't even know if we work together, but that showed interest in working with me on my skincare journey and asked what I was doing this year. And I brought up an opportunity. And they basically said they didn't want to do the opportunity as proposed, but would rather just give samples. And there would have been a version of me that would have been desperate. And desperate is a very strong word, but felt
Yeah.
like I needed an attachment to make something successful or to appear as if it was successful. And just a little bit of transparency. I'm working on a 4-year anniversary event. Is it gonna happen? Who knows? But I also praise God for that perspective to not care whether or not it does. And the only reason why it might not is because I refuse to spend my own money. I've been spending my own money doing too many things and I'm tired of it. That's when I'm the most spent, like quite literally, and that's when I'm the most like exhausted and overwhelmed. But it's looking really good. So anyway, I responded to them and I said, I'm gonna have to respectfully decline. And let you know that we are actually broaching other companies. This would have been an organic relationship, but we are broaching more commercial companies in this industry, and paid packages come with exclusivity. So I can't promise you anything right now. And I just felt like I had my business hat on. I didn't feel less confident about saying no because there were still other opportunities that we could have like been doing together. But I've been standing in my complete self in every room that I've been in. And at risk of sounding ignorant or at risk of sounding like what I want isn't what the other people in the room want, like I'm okay with that, because if it's not what I want, I'm not going to love doing it. I'm not going to feel strong about it. I'm not going to feel certain and sure about it. And one thing that I for sure prayed for was to not be battling with uncertainty. So I think that's the major shift. I'm more sure. And I feel like I even said that last year, even when I was frequently talking about living on a wing and a prayer, like I was sure God was going to work it out, but like now I'm feeling sureness every day. So yeah, that's my news. I don't got no other news.
I love the idea of standing and answering prayers too. I had a moment with my best friend on the phone the other day, and I remember I used to ask God, like, give me something I could use to like get ahead. I feel like I never had a skill that I can go do somebody's hair real quick and get $50. I couldn't go do a thing and get something really quickly. I always just had to rely on my job. And I'm in the process of, moving, where you guys know, I don't want to share too much, but I'm in the process of moving. And I was able to leverage, kind of what I do to cut costs in the move. And it was like, oh wow, like, thank you, God. Like I'm in that prayer has been answered, right? And I think we don't always know when those shifts are taking place, even to the idea of worry. This is my next, I haven't had really a true faith move since June of 2022 when I left my job. I've had a lot of calculated moves. I've had a lot of risky moves, but not a lot of faith moves. And this is another faith move for me because it's not solid. There's not things that are solidified. There's not a lot of, what I'm saying? I'm really just kind of leaning on the fact that I feel called and feel led and feel like just purpose in this way. But I think it's tough sometimes when I left my job with no real money. And it was like, okay, God, I'm about to jump. Catch me. And I think in those moments when we find ourselves there, it's like, and I'm just encouraging so many people now because of the newfound encouragement that I have within myself that's like, I'm gonna bank on the positive because I've been banking on the negative for so long. I've always anticipated. I've catastrophized my life enough. I'm over it. I'm ready to like even now, honestly, and again without sharing too much, but while still sharing, everything has to go right. And you guys know what that means intimately, but everything has to go right within the next like 2 weeks. Like, okay, like I there's no really room for error at all. But what's interesting about God is um, everything's been going accordingly, and I think so much about that in this season of my life. It goes like because I say this for myself. I'm not trying to. This isn't biblical. This is my own relationship with God. But when it's purpose, it will be simple. And I think simple is the most operative word for me. Not easy, but it will be simple. And I think in this case, a lot of things have been simple. And I'm like, oh, okay. And when I look back over my life, the things I was supposed to do, the way that I was supposed to move, the things I was obedient to were simple in its choice. And I find myself right now making like, oh, okay, I need to do this. Oh, heard you. And last thing, I'm gonna be quiet. Yee! Let me tell you how good. Woo! He's funny. I was cleaning out my crib. And I've been going back and forth to my trash can, of course, dumping stuff out, right? Dumping stuff out. Cool. No worries. Dumping stuff out, dumping stuff out, dumping stuff out. So I go to dump something out. Why the joint fall out my hand and hit the driveway with it? So I'm like, okay, like all this little, like, screws and pins, and it was like a little bucket of those things. I was trying to throw away, missed the trash can. It fell on the thing. Fine, no worries. So I'm sweeping it up. Cool. I put it in the trash can, move on my day. The next day happens. I go to sell my bed, right? And I'm like, okay, I got to take my bed apart. But of course, I didn't keep the tools for my bed because I built the bed a long time ago, threw away. While I go outside to my driveway, the screw, the only thing I didn't sweep up, the only thing I did not sweep up was the screw to undo my bed. And I'm like, it's just sitting in my driveway. And I'm like, now wait a minute. And mind you, I've been telling myself I'm gonna keep my little bed, And I was like, no, I'm selling it. And I go out to my driveway just randomly, and it's a screw for my bed. I'm like, whoa, this is getting crazy. But again, I think so much about how like when the things you're supposed to be doing are things you're supposed to be doing, they will be simple. But that's my little like testimony / reality.
Is that
right
your tool for holding?
Yes, actually. And I really and if I may, for the believers in the house,
Okay.
trust God.
A
I don't
little
know. Yeah, like hear me in the spirit right now. Like trust God. I don't know. I know we need that church, but like trust God, because I feel like for the believers, you're gonna land there anyway. Like you know what I'm saying? Like we can do the whole other stuff, but like really trust God. Because there's somebody right now listening who is battling with trusting God, battling with obedience, battling with the calling of your life, and it's like just trust God, because when it's time to move, it will be simple. So like if it's not simple, it might not be time. Because I think even now, what I'm doing, I once thought was time, but I now know that was not time, and that this was truly my time to shine. And I think so much about that now, where again, like the things that God is calling us to do. And okay, I'm gonna be quiet this. I swear. Me and my best friend have these two questions we ask each other for accountability. We say, is this the dream? And what's the rush? And those two questions have saved my life, because you can be really, really urgent about things that are not urgent, and you can settle into things that are not your dream. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Is that the dream? And I'm like, no, this isn't the dream, actually. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, well, like, what's the rush? Like, oh, like, what is the rush? Or it's like, oh, the rush is that, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, again, a probing question that allows you to check in with yourself and allow you to be accountable. So, yeah, praise God.
Well, guys, any announcements? before we go? Any cool things we're allowed to talk about?
NDA's over here, baby.
I know that's right. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for enduring with us. We really, really like this episode. Yeah, more from us. More from us and coming soon. So we'll catch you next week.
Oh, disclaimer. I was moving a lot in the episode because my butt hurts. Oh wait, whoa. I'm on the floor.
And another disclaimer, if you see any skin growing on my face, I have
This part for me.
but also show it to you.
And
Any
Sim is
disclaimers for
pregnant.
you, Sim? Yeah,
Oh, okay.
she's pregnant.
Is there a heart? Is there a heart in the house tonight? Stand up, stand up.
Stand up.
This part for me.